Aloha, everybody. Welcome,
Aloha.
Elephants in Our Rooms. And we're going to try something new. Broadcasting on Facebook, simulcasting to Facebook. This is our first time trying that. So, everybody out there, choose where you want to face it. We'll do it to the news feed. Okay. I've got, I don't know, 5,000 followers. Let's see if we get anybody following us in this episode of Elephants in Our Rooms. So we have today, I'm Janet Care Lesson, and beside me is Dr. Sasha Alex Lesson, and Russell Scott Brininger is calling in from, what part of the world are you in, Russ?
I'm in Indiana.
Indiana. And Deborah
Uh-huh.
DeFranco, oh, I don't know, I think there's stuff I have to do. Oh, goodness. Okay, well, let's just try this. There's some things I have to do to get it to go live. Live clipping. Okay. Okay, here we go. We're just going to connect to the live video. We're flying blind here. We don't know what we're doing. We're like all the celebrities that go, we don't know what we're doing. Everybody
One way to find out, just jump in, try it.
jumping into the deep end of the water. Okay, well, hopefully that'll be able to run. So let's talk politics. And I'm just going to say it loud and proud. I am a never Trumper. And now this whole Trumpism, fascism, Nazism, racism, whatever you want to call it, it's not my cup of tea. So who wants to start?
I'd like to start.
Go ahead, honey.
Yeah, it's the name of this series is The Elephant of Reality. And I tend to look at ideas about what is, like the blind folks feeling the elephant, and each is one of them thinks it's like a tree, and another one thinks it's like a snake, and so forth. And yet they all have a piece of the reality. And so when you start thinking that way, which is non-dualistic, in other words, anything that you think is in opposition is really part of the same thing, part of a dimension. Everything expands for you, and that's the way in the way I look at things, which is from the center, an ever-expanding center. There's ways of realizing that everything that we're opposed to is really part of the system that we're part of, and that if we get to the level of the intrinsic deep needs, we can find synergistic ways of transcending, making a system that incorporates the apparent opposites, and that's what I seek. That's how I'd like to kick one off.
Okay, so honey, I just want you to be aware that the camera is there, and if you're looking at the mic, I can't see you, and don't close your eyes. Okay, Russell, are you going to be on the screen? I don't see your image.
Well, let's see. Start video. How's that?
There he is.
Perfect.
I had to push a button.
It looks like you're in an attic. Are you in an attic?
I'm in an attic. I like Albert Bender. This is my man cave up here.
I like it. I like that. I don't really have an attic. That'd be great. Okay, so we're going to try something where I can share the screen. And I think, and once again, I've lost my screen. I'll try one more time. That's sad. Let's try that. No, that's sad. I don't understand this at all. This is not.
We're enacting how people that don't know what they're doing can fumble around and still be entertaining.
I don't look for entertaining at all. But I wanted to see.
Yeah, we're making it easy for other people who have never done Facebook Live, so they don't feel so bad.
I have no idea if we're actually broadcasting Facebook Live. That was just a okay.
There he is.
It's a whiteboard, so I can draw in there.
How cool.
But I want
to go to screen saved.
Huh?
Now I just have a white screen.
No, I don't want to do that one. Okay, here's the screen.
I see you in a little box, but then I've got a white screen.
Okay, and then I don't like this. There's nobody. I guess I'm gonna have to try.
See where it says share screen?
Yeah, the share screen is lit. Okay, stop share. Okay. I have a wonderful website called Elephants in Our Rooms, and I have all these things that we're doing. Like, I have all these things I put on the website, which talks about all the topics.
I know. Let's prepare in advance and rehearse this so that it comes up.
PowerPoint is a virtual background. Basic. Okay, try one more. This is screwy.
Optimize screen sharing.
For video, but that's for video clip. Okay, let's try that. Why not? Share. Offline full screen. No, there's no
Oh.
videos there. All right, I give up. But I have all this information. Oh, okay. So let me try this.
If you can go to a website, just go directly to the website.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the website, which I had up. Here it is. It should be right here. Here it should be.
That's right. There it is.
And it has wiped out my link for me to share my website. I had it queued, ready to go. Okay.
It's still there.
Here it is. Okay. Here's Elephants in Our Rooms.
There it
Now,
is.
can you see that, Russell?
I can see the elephants in the room.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I make this every week. It's called Elephants in Our Rooms. And I collect all these pictures. Like here's Trump and everybody rushing to the White House. I'm not sure what it says. Something about everyone. Here's the pro-Trump anarchy, violence, terror, the snake, Trump won, stop the steal. So here are, I subscribe to the Daily Kos, K-O-S. And there's all these articles like this, the QAnon congresswoman is trying to get someone killed with her latest incitement. So this new congresswoman, you click on this and it uploads to the article. And apparently she's running around the Congress with her Glock, right? And she tweeted, now don't tell me this isn't getting, here's a picture of her. There she is. She's got Trump won for her face mask. She's a newly elected, her name is, oh, come on, goodness, stop. I don't want to buy any shirts. Okay, her name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she's continuing to build the case for her removal from the White House, from the House of Representatives by tweeting things like this. I think this was during the thing, or this might have been during the riot. These Democrats are the enemies to the American people who are leading the impeachment witch hunt against President Trump. Yeah, she tweeted it last week again. And then she says they will be held accountable. This is called stochastic terrorism. So, and apparently I have another one where she was just going around the, what do you call those? When they, you go through the
Metal detectors.
Metal detectors, that's the word. And then now Pelosi is going to fine everybody.
$10,000.
See, you read the news. What do you think of that, Russell? What do you think about people like
Well,
removed from Congress?
when I first started seeing the Q T-shirt show up at Trump rallies, I didn't know what Q was, so I looked into it. As it turns out, it's an anonymous internet poster. I found out some of them thought that it was the late JFK Jr., who was deceased in 1997, I believe, with two other people. Positive confirmation of death. And there's this other fellow named Vince that shows up at Trump rallies that they think is JFK Jr. in disguise. So I smelled nonsense and delusion from the beginning of it. You know? So, I mean, the idea of accepting the word, I mean, you and I both know who can be behind the keyboard. It could be anybody. It could be a 14-year-old working out of his grandmother's basement. And the fact that so many people have latched on to a completely anonymous poster just because it feeds them the worldview that they would like to buy into is quite frankly terrifying to me. And what makes that even more disturbing is the fact that this delusion of QAnon, who tried very hard to demonize Democrats as satanic, adrenochrome drinking child sex traffickers, or at least sympathetic to child sex trafficking. You run into them online, and if you criticize Trump at all, they'll accuse you of either being a sex trafficker or sympathetic to sex trafficking. And what the FBI said is that QAnon is actually interfering with their efforts to bust child sex trafficking rings because of the bogus claims and the bogus nonsense that's coming from Q. So it actually delegitimized and hindered their efforts. So anybody that's into QAnon that accuses other people of not being into QAnon as sympathetic to child sex trafficking is just not looking at the data. And I'm just stupefied by it that somebody can just appear from nowhere on some internet chat room like 4chan or 8chan or 8kun or whatever, hosted by Jim Watkins and his son Ron, who moved to the Philippines, I think, to be a pig farmer. And, you know, who knows who's doing the Q drops on there. But it buys into this worldview that has Trump as a central figure in an eschatological scenario where the woke people are going to be saved and transcend and beat the deep state and the new world order, and then everybody else is just going to be enslaved by artificial intelligence or whatever. And the thing that puzzles me about the Trump versus the deep state narrative is that my understanding of the deep state is that it involves the military industrial complex, and Trump overlooked the torture, murder, and dismemberment of Khashoggi to sell billions of dollars worth of arms to the Saudi Arabians. So he's very much a tool of the deep state, along with the world banks and big pharma and fossil fuel industry. He installed Rex Tillerson because they were looking for an Arctic drilling deal with some of the Russian oligarchs that they do business with, like Simeon Mogilevich. So it's just a very disturbing thing that's happened. And one of the interesting things is the people on the outside of this looking in, like myself, gosh, we've just been inundated with names: libtard, snowflake, cupcake, we've got TDS. And I listened to an interview with Steve Hassan, who's a cult expert. He actually fell for the Moonies. I don't, that's before a lot of people's time, but there was.
Here. Let me show you that. I grabbed that here. There he is. And let's try playing a little bit of this. This is interesting.
Okay.
But I wanted to comment before we go into that. This is a good transition to the next thing. Okay.
Okay.
First of all, you got to stop because you got to give us a little bit of time because you're brilliant, Russell, and then I get confused with what I wanted to respond to it. But this guy explains how they do this. This is Orwellian doublespeak. You know, when we were kids, we were introduced to Orwell's 1984. This is it. This is what he was warning against. This is the way you can mind control people. You take what they're saying and you echo it back. So you change the meanings of all the words. Good is bad, you know, light is dark. And so they've taken words that meant other things. They took socialism and made it a dirty word. You were talking about a number of things that they've done. Oh, the child trafficking. And then as soon as you bust them on what they're actually doing, they reverse and say, no, you're the one doing it. And somehow they're so convincing. So let me just put this in what was his name? Dr. Steve
Hassan.
Hassan. Okay,
yeah.
Let's see if this.
He wrote a book called The Trump Cult.
Okay, let's.
I know that you wrote a book, Dr. Hassan, called The Cult of Trump. Can you help us understand the cult of Donald Trump?
Yes, the cult of Donald Trump is best described as him, first of all, as the absolute leader who demands total obedience, who has a malignant narcissist personality, which is the stereotypical profile, by the way, of other cult leaders. But the specific pyramid structure controls people's behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions, and demands complete obedience. So in that cult, people have a black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil mindset. They're controlled through fear and manipulation of information. They have phobias that are installed in their heads, thinking that if they disobey, terrible things are going to happen to them. And really, people have reported it, and I was in the Moonies cult myself, so I can tell you firsthand. It's like a radical personality change where your real integrity, your conscience is put aside by this new cloned identity that suppresses you. And fortunately for me, I was deprogrammed at the request of my family, and I started to reality test again, and that's what's led me for 44 years to help others get out of destructive off.
Now, I think I have to pause these videos that are infringing on copyrights. We're allowed to show pieces of it and comment. So, Sasha, what would you like to say about cults?
What we have here is a bonding pattern which forces people into a subordinate role, and that's what it ignores is the two-way fact that the leader is dependent on his followers to be someone to lead, and it basically robs you of options to have that kind of a structure. That's my analysis.
Russell, what do you think of cults?
Well, it's so detached from reality over a period of time, and they keep moving the goalposts. It's like the election, Biden won the election fair and square, and all the people that I know that are leaning towards the Trump cult were saying, oh, there's no way he won it. There's no way he'll get the electors. And as soon as what they believe is going to happen doesn't happen, instead of just accepting that they're getting information from bad sources, they move the goalpost down the road a little bit. And now the goalpost has been shifted several times. First it was, Trump's going to win the lawsuits. Well, he lost 60 lawsuits. The Republican appointed SCOTUS appointees are going to save him. Well, they didn't do that. He had no standing. The electors are going to be overturned. They weren't overturned. And everything they're predicting is happening is being shot down like bowling pins one at a time. And they just keep moving the goalpost out. Now the latest thing is that Trump has called martial law and enacted the Insurrection Act. And he's going to be installed, not right away, but sometime in February to replace Biden. So I mean, they just keep sinking their time and their emotions and their mentality into this cult of personality. And I've seen a lot of different presidents, but this one's unique in the fact that.
Stop at the Insurrection Act, and before you just bookmark where you are. Bookmark where you are. What did you? So I should close your mouth because you're catching flies. You're on screen. Okay, so
So by the theory of cognitive dissonance, each time they make a commitment, it takes less and less stimulus to make them accelerate their commitment. And Festinger showed in When Prophecy Fails, the reason it fails is because they didn't do it enough, and so some drop out, but some recommit with twice as much vigor. And that's what you have here. With each of these crises, these people commit more and more deeply.
Right. Okay. And
right.
So I want to go back to this. What they're declaring.
That he's declaring martial law, and he's going to take over the country.
Go back to what you said, Russell. Yeah. What are they doing?
Yeah. Well, the first thing was that they didn't think there's any way that 44.5 would win the presidency. That's what they called him, 44.5, Joe Biden. Okay. And he won by 8 million votes, so they just can't accept that. So it's really easy for them to think that the election was rigged. And no matter how it plays out in reality, no matter how many court cases are lost, the Supreme Court shoots it down. The Republican Trump appointed, Trump supporting election officials are saying there's no election fraud. His own appointed Attorney General, Bill Barr, said no significant election fraud that would overturn the election. You always have little glitches and anomalies on any election, but it's not significant enough to flip it. Then the Dominion machine designed by Hugo Chavez, you know, that was going to flip all the software. Well, it's not possible to do that. In fact, Dominion CEOs are taking Sidney Powell to court to sue her for slander because all the flim-flam about Dominion being bad software has hurt their company.
Russell,
So
what
they're
was
in the middle of a lawsuit with
February?
that.
You went back too far.
Huh?
What are they doing in February? How are they going to put Trump in February? What was that
Well,
act that they?
the latest thinking is that Trump has enacted some type of insurrection act or martial law
Insurrection
secretly.
Act. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know much about the details of it. But yeah, they're firmly convinced that in the middle of February, Trump's going to nullify the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and do a second term. They're still hanging on to that idea that he's going to do a second term. And we've done radio shows before about Dr. Bandy Lee's book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. And those 37 psychologists are completely vindicated in their assessment that he's a pathological liar and a malignant narcissist and has extreme present hedonism, according to the Zimbardo testing. And everything they said in that book has come to pass. And everybody that foresaw violence, including myself, is vindicated because of the mob that we saw on Wednesday, January 6th. And they won't even accept that that was them that did that. They're blaming it on Antifa. And Antifa is just a loosely structured group, you know, that's not highly organized. And the FBI's come out and said that all the scuttlebutt and chit chatter on the internet was all from the Trump world. And now that Parler has been scrubbed, where all these Trump supporters were planning further insurrection and violence, they flip-flopped to the Telegraph, which is the same platform that Al-Qaeda uses. So Trump has really radicalized a certain faction, not everybody. I know a lot of Trump supporters. I know 4 people that were there in Washington the day that this mob happened, and they're as horrified as anybody else. They didn't go there expecting that. It just got out of hand. And what I would say is that if a few Antifa agitators can lead thousands of Trump flag waving Trump supporters into the Capitol to defecate on the floor and break windows, and, you know, one gal got shot to death, it's a pretty weak-minded movement if you're going to let Antifa lead you by the nose. But
No,
as far as what
that's not Antifa. It was,
it's not. The FBI's confirmed that.
Trumpets.
Yeah, one guy's ex-wife turned him in, and you know, and they're finding out who these people are, and they're all the diehard radicalized Trump supporters that pulled this stunt. And the fact that somebody came in with handcuffs, zip ties, and they built a gallows for Mike Pence with chants, "Hang Mike Pence," you know, it's a terrifying thing. And I never thought I'd live to see the day that 20,000 National Guard has to be installed at the nation's capital to protect us from potential threats from domestic terrorists from within the country. And that's where we're at.
There's reports that there were insiders that gave special tours to the leaders of the guerrillas that came in of who is where.
Right. There was a tour. I have that video too. But let me go. The Insurrection Act gives the president authority to call on the military and National Guard to suppress an insurrection. But Trump is doing the insurrection, so he can't evoke the insurrection.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Will speak again. He's the one doing the
Dr.
insurrection.
Strangelove. He's biting his hand that's trying to strangle
So
himself.
that doesn't apply. That's hilarious.
I mean, I'm talking to people online that believe very firmly that Donald Trump is a time traveler that came here to lead us into 5D ascension. There's a UFO cult out in California. I don't want to mention the name, but when December 21st came around, I was inundated with private messages from this one gal in particular that was trying to get me on board with the cult. And she said when December 21st comes and the Saturn-Jupiter alignment, the light codes were going to be turned on. And I said, is this sort of like the rapture where all the Trump supporters are going to disappear? She goes, no, we're staying here. You guys are leaving. I said, what do you mean we're leaving? And she goes, we are going to transform into fifth density Earth. You guys who are low vibe are going to be taken to another planet to live out your three-dimensional remedial existence. So I said, okay, well, that's a reverse rapture where you guys stay and the rest of us leave. She goes, that's right. Well, I told her the only thing I had planned for December 21st was to take my Yorkie poo to the groomer. And that's exactly what I did. And December 21st came and went without incident. And then, she was gone. So, I mean, and there's cults out west that call themselves light workers, and I actually call them white workers because all their memes and stuff that they post is just racist BS. It's baloney, Michelle Obama's a man. Obama wasn't from here. I mean, it's all white grievance disguised as New Age religion.
Go back to that stuff. That is called, that is propaganda to alienate you and invalidate Obama as our president. It started with the birtherism movement.
Right.
Many years before that, the birther movement, and that sparked racism. We've always had racism, but to another level. All these things led into, the riot on the Capitol. All these things have built up over time. It's stochastic terrorism, active measures. We've done shows on that before, but it creates cults. So let me go another segment of Stephen Hassan.
Authoritarian cults.
I can see how some hardcore Trump supporters could be described as cult members, but I can also see a lot of people watching this saying, we actually just like his policies. We feel we don't want our taxes raised. We agree with him vis-a-vis China. We want to be strong internationally, or whatever explanation they may have that supports their point of view. 74 million people. Are you saying they're all members of a cult?
So I'm acknowledging 74 million people voted for Donald Trump in the last election, but I would doubt that most of them believe that Donald Trump is an agent of God or has all of the answers. I think many of them who voted for him were already Republican, for example, or they bought into the disinformation campaign against the Democratic Party. But for me, the real sign of a cult member is the inability to see the possibility that the leader could be bad or wrong.
Do you think Donald Trump set out to be a cult leader, or did it simply transpire on its own because of his style and ideology?
I think Donald Trump got to the place of running the cult of Trump through his upbringing, through his father, Fred, who was an authoritarian and reportedly said to him and his brother, "You are a killer, you are a king, you are a killer, you are a king," over and over again, but also exposed his children to a cultish Christian-esque type group that was very magical thinking, believe and you will succeed, doubts is evil. So he learned thought stopping, which is a mind control technique, as an early child. Of course, then he was sent to a military academy as well. That also kind of groomed him. But the bottom line was that he was a clone of his father, Fred, and he did all of his business practices as a narcissist that wanted total obedience and control. And it was only later that he was recruited by authoritarian cult people as a good figurehead for them to have political influence and power.
Okay, I'm going to stop that right there. That's a lot to unpack. Do you have any thoughts on what was just presented? You want to come over here, Sasha, and look at the screen. Come closer. We can't see you.
Yeah, we've got to go deeper into these people to see what they really need. A sense they really need is a sense of safety and security. And that's exactly what everybody needs, is a sense of safety and security And that's where we can all meet. I think that we have to stop totally dissing and see where our meeting ground is. And I'm not condoning the people that committed crimes and invaded the Capitol. They should, get their jail sentences or whatever. But I'm saying we've got to have a healing. I think it's really important.
Well, I think we can't rush to that level without addressing the problem, because if we just keep saying, that's okay.
No, it's not okay.
It's not okay. This is not okay. And what he was talking about is Mary Trump wrote a book about her family. And this is the programming that Donald got at the hands of his father. And it really taught him some basic structures, which made him ripe for, he was recruited. We watched the Active Measures video, and it talked about how he was recruited as an agent for Putin to come in and eventually take down the United States government. So we were we're very close to losing it all. Democracies are fragile. And if we don't really, nip this in the butt, we can't go, oh, that's what the Republican congressmen are trying to say. Don't impeach. Oh, forgive him. They were making excuses for him. But these endless excuses, like just let him have a little bit of fun until he gets removed from the throne, right? That's what led to this Capitol riot. And how did he get to this point? Well, he was programmed by his conditions in his childhood to read Mary Trump's book. It was horrendous. His father was just horrendous. And it created a bunch of narcissists. The children were all struggling with being, we were talking about narcissism. Is it culture, or is it conditioning, or is it genetic? And so this is what's behind all this, and we need to really figure out how to identify these people and not let them run for office in the first place, because we're pretty stupid as a country. We let a narcissist take over our planet, and this is a very dangerous one, but this happened before with Hitler, and so we keep doing it. And how many times can we do this and survive as a species? And this time we have COVID on top of it. So, COVID may never go away. I was listening to a show earlier, and I've been getting this on a gut core level, that this is an apocalyptic virus that keeps mutating and changing. And there's 8 billion of us. It's really hard to do herd immunity. Back in the turn of the 19th to 20th century, early 20th century, there were only 3 billion of us. And somehow that variation died out, but this one just keeps changing and going round and round and round. And with Trumpism, which has conditioned our people to say, no, I won't wear a mask. No, I won't get a vaccine. I have no idea if the vaccine's safe or not. I'm not going to run out and get one tomorrow, but it's like something has to give, or humanity will give, and we will be no more. So back to you, Russell Brenninger.
Well, there's a lot of disinformation going around on how this vaccine works. It's a messenger RNA vaccine, and people don't understand the science. And I don't claim to understand all the science, but the claims that are being made, like it's going to change your DNA and turn you into an antenna, and a solution called luciferase is going to be injected into you so they can see if you've been vaccinated under a black light. I mean, there's just a lot of paranoia coming from the right that isn't true. I mean,
address the black light thing. There is supposedly, and this I read a completely different article, like that the government is creating they're creating a like a glow thing, so you will glow if you have, this goes back to the Bible and the mark of the beast. So
well, they need to put more attention into how they name these chemicals, because it's just like the telescope that the Vatican leased out to a university. They called the telescope Lucifer.
Yeah.
Well, that just feeds into everybody that latches onto that as a conspiracy theory. And it's the same way for this glow light solution. They did it for measles vaccines to be able, but it's called luciferase. So, I mean, that's just prime, for conspiracy theorists to just latch onto that and portray it as something satanic, the mark of the beast, you know, the end days and all that. It just
every
the
time you go
vaccine
to the
does not.
hospital and they get the intravenous, they can inject things there. I mean, you're sitting there
Yeah.
asleep and you're hooked up to intravenous, and you never know when you're gonna get in the hospital. I was in the hospital in
Yeah.
2015 or 2016 for 10 days, and I'm thinking I better be really nice to these nurses. They can put whatever they want in that intravenous, and I'm old, and it can look like a natural death, and so it's like, yeah, I don't think.
No, I think you know, some mild level of wariness is natural because the FDA just pushed it through for emergency use. It didn't go through the normal channels, but hopefully they've tested it on enough human beings to where it's safe and effective. And it seems to be safe and effective. My wife Julia, she got hers yesterday, and I told her I'm going to wait and see if she croaks before I get mine. And but the clarification here is that it doesn't go into the nucleus of the cell and change your DNA. You're not going to become a transhuman chimera or anything like that. You know, it stays in the cytoplasm, and what it does is it teaches your cells how to make this just the surface spike protein of the coronavirus, so that your body produces antibodies, so that if you're actually introduced to the coronavirus, you've already got the antibodies that are responding. It's like the movie where they send the guy out in the fake rhinoceros, you know, to interact with rhinoceroses. You're faking out your immune system by just producing a benign protein of the surface spike protein, and that produces the antibody. So one of the epidemiologists that I really like is Michael Osterholm, and you can tell people know what they're talking about when reality matches what they predict. And back in February, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he predicted 400,000 deaths by the end of the year. And guess what? We just turned over. I mean, he was really on the nose with that. So
Wow.
I'm really proud and happy that Michael Osterholm's going to be part of Joe Biden's pandemic team. And another person that's going to be part of his pandemic team is Richard Bright, who got fired by Trump for blowing the whistle on Trump's incompetence in dealing with the coronavirus. So he's back on the team. So I'm really impressed with the people that Joe is putting together. And it's so nice because he's dismantling the kekistocracy that Trump created. He took people like the nuclear physicist that Obama had at the Department of Energy and replaced him with Rick Perry, who doesn't know how to tie his shoes. You know, so basically a kakistocracy is intentionally installing the least qualified individuals into every department that you can. And Trump's persona is such that, he wanted to be in power, and installing people that don't know anything in all these departments of government would ensure that they were all lackeys and yes people. And anybody that conflicted with him, he automatically fired and got rid of them by tweet. So there's a couple of things I'm really looking forward to after the inauguration is not seeing a president tweet every day, number one. And I keep telling my conservative friends, they don't understand why Trump didn't win, because his rally size was big. And I told them that Till Lindemann, the lead singer of Rammstein, drew a crowd of 1 million. It was like in the Guinness Book of Records, the most attendees. But I don't think Till Lindemann, who was a basket weaver before he became the lead singer for Rammstein, is qualified to be president. I mean, so by that logic of the rally size, Till Lindemann ought to run for president and win. And it doesn't work that way. I don't have any plans on going out and buying a blue Biden hat or showing up at Biden rallies. It's a different mindset. I'm not prone towards authoritarian cult leaders. And I just want Joe to do his job and leave us alone. Maybe do a State of the Union address every 3 months or something, and get some good policies implemented. Maybe rebuild our infrastructure and things that need to be done. But the president as a person should not be the central figure that people have attached themselves to. And it's like anybody that criticizes the person they're attached to is just unpatriotic and should move to China.
Wait, that's great. Let's stop right there and take that in. Go ahead, Sash.
Well, it's the bonding pattern. It's got to be two ways. The president needs the people's support. He's dependent on the people. The people need the president. if we start looking at the reality of a relationship, we can, the president is supposed to represent all of us, and that's really important. The government needs us too. Yeah, and
Right,
we
so
have
there's no government unless there's somebody to govern,
exactly.
right? So it's a two-way street. But we're going to play a little bit more of this. All right.
What kind of people are receptive to being in a cult or following a cult-like leader?
So people are typically very susceptible to the appeals of a destructive cult because of deception. And that's a very important point the public needs to understand, that intelligent, educated people don't go, you know what, I want to be abused and exploited and be part of an authoritarian cult that breaks the laws. No, the appeals are to grandiosity, make America great again, we're going to restore democracy, we're going to drain the swamp, etc. So there are very deceptive appeals. But essentially, in my research of over 40 years, people are in vulnerable moments in their life where they'll be more receptive to a recruitment message or recruiter. So death of a loved one, illness, dislocation, losing a job. I mean, seriously, the pandemic and the economic problems are huge susceptibility factors for the public going forward. Destabilizing a country group's economic status is a major technique for doing mind control on people, because you want to disorient people, you want to confuse people, you want to make people search for meaning and hope outside of the existing institutional structures. So the susceptibility of people now to look to, well, who knows the solution to the problem of how to make the world a better place now? Unfortunately, the human mind responds to certainty. And cult leaders are very good at talking in a way that's very convincing.
Proud citizens like you help build this country, and together we are taking back our country. Our fight to drain the Washington swamp and reclaim America's destiny has just begun.
This kind of communication kind of accesses people's emotional brain, not their critical thinking part, but their emotional brain of, well, maybe he seems to sound confident. Maybe he can do something because things are so bad.
What you're saying is he preyed on people's economic anxiety?
So Donald Trump used in his recruitment and indoctrination into becoming the president, identifying key groups of people and their unique vulnerabilities, or what buttons could be pushed to motivate them to become followers. And a lot of data was gathered on American citizens to know exactly which buttons to push. Someone's religious and they don't like abortion, press that button. Someone's a gun owner, they want the NRA. So people are transformed or radicalized, depending on the words, through a systematic social influence process. And in my research, working with Chinese communist brainwashing patterns, for example, I've identified behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control as the 4 overlapping variables that, when applied to people, and I should add, in this day and age, it's coming to us through digital media. It's coming to us through our smartphones if we're signing up for certain sites or watching certain YouTubes, etc., that people can be systematically influenced. And without knowledge and education about how mind control works and the differences between ethical and unethical influence, people are sitting ducks, in my opinion.
Okay, so I think that the what do you call it? The COVID virus was intentionally pushed throughout the world as the major destabilizer. And that sounds like conspiracy, but if you look at it logically, it's like, And it was, and Trump admitted that they thought they could reach herd immunity, but to reach herd immunity with 8 going on 9 billion people, millions and millions and millions would die. So that's not going to happen without a huge devastation to the entire planet. So not only did he, gain control of our population and 74 million people to vote for him, he's killed millions of people around the planet. We have 400,000 dead. Did we go across that line today? I didn't see that. That'll be in the news.
It's close if it did, and I'm not sure exactly.
I don't think it's crossed it yet.
But there's no doubt, however COVID came about, whether it was intentionally produced or accidentally unleashed on the world through wet markets in China or a lab or whatever, there's no doubt that moneyed people seized upon it as an opportunity to stuff more money in their pocket. During the whole shutdown, 100,000 small businesses have been lost and 40 million people unemployed. But Jeff Bezos may become the first trillionaire. I mean, there's winners and losers in this COVID thing. And the online sellers where you can, the companies that have stay-at-home workers, stay-at-home schools, stay-at-home everything, basically, it's changing the world in that direction where people work more online, they buy more online. I mean, I know people on lockdown that order all their food from Amazon and it shows up at the door and they scrub it with alcohol and they let it sit for 48 hours. They're not wanting to go out and mingle, in crowds of people where they could get COVID. And then that brings up the whole other issue of my friends are lions who don't wear a mask and your friends are sheep, for wearing a mask. And that mentality of masculinizing and heroizing not wearing a mask contributed to the deaths. Because the flu, for example, has gone down, the flu cases are gone down 98%. And the health officials are saying it was because of the masking that's unusual and the social distancing that it actually helped people not die from the flu as well.
Right. Well, of course. These are all airborne.
And it's easy for people, when the society is changing in major ways, you've got machinery and artificial intelligence taking over more and more of the labor force. People worry about how they're going to make a living. They are resistant to the idea of universal basic income, but at the same time, I don't see any of my Trump supporting friends denying the stimulus checks. Ordinarily, if Hillary Clinton was in office, they would call it socialism. But I guess if Trump gives you a check, it's capitalism. I don't know exactly how that works. But, we're going through a lot of changes. And when you're in a world where things are majorly shifting, it's easy to think that there's big, dark, nebulous forces that are intentionally doing this to you. And in Trump world, you've got the dark cabal, the secret government that's trying to get rid of the United States sovereignty and blend us in with the rest of the world so that they can enslave us all and hook us up to an artificial intelligence and, where we don't even have souls anymore. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff out there. And even I wrote a book, that alludes to some of that, but I have a lot more hope for the future on the positive forces in the universe than what I see happening in conspiracy world. John Keel said it best back in 1970. He said, ufology, which is a community I like to associate with, ufology is plagued with a malignant conservatism. And what I've found out through experience of entering the field is that as somebody who leans left and has leaned left politically since I was about 13 years old, I'm in the minority. Most of the old white ufologists are Trump supporters for some reason or another. And it seems to be having tied into their view of what it means to be a man. One fellow in particular explained he didn't want me to criticize Trump anymore until I read Robert Greene's book. So I looked on Amazon to see what Robert Greene wrote. And he wrote one book about how to manipulate women into bed with you. And he wrote another book on 48 Laws of Power on how to dominate everybody. And this particular person admires Sun Tzu, The Art of War. So what he sees in Trump is Sun Tzu and The Art of War and Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. He's a strong, powerful person. And from my perspective, he's as weak as you can get. He's a man baby. You know, he can't even stand losing an election. So he makes up this huge lie that the election was rigged and it was stolen from me. And that lie has already caused 5 deaths and may cause some more next week, depending on how bad it gets.
Okay, hold on. Sash wants to interject something.
Well, it's just,
Over here. Gotta come closer. Area. You can look at here. Go ahead.
okay, well, it's just that the function of the carbon epidemic may be for humanity to realize we're all in this together and we all need to take care of each other or we're all gonna die and the earth is gonna be rid of us. And so that if you take a step back and you say, just as we would do with an individual in existential therapy, we say, if we created this situation for our own evolution, how does that look? And that's how it looks to me. The way out of this mess is for us to realize our unity and clean up our polluting behaviors and stop wars and make sure that people are provided for and the animals are preserved. And, you know, anybody that can understand that all of this is can have a function and a purpose if we just step back a bit. That's what I think.
Yeah, for me, wearing a mask shows that you care, not that I'm ashamed,
Yeah.
that I give a damn about
Yeah.
other people. And I
Yeah.
saw a YouTube where the kids were just appalled. I mean, how is this affecting the kids? You know, they're very young and they're watching our Capitol building being, you know, these kids, a lot of them are going to grow up much differently than the
Yeah, how do you explain that to him?
Yeah. But this seemed to be the straw that broke the camel's back. You know,
Oh, yeah.
these people were cowards.
When you got Mitch McConnell saying he might vote for impeachment, you know you screwed up.
Right. They were cowering. They were making fun. All these Congress people and elected officials and people trapped in the Capitol building were making phone calls to their kids and their loved ones. And they said, this might be my last call. Does it really have to
Yeah.
that level for the entire planet?
Well, they were terrorized.
You're looking at your last call and who do you call for us to do the changes that Dr. Lesson was telling us to do, to really start loving each other. And see, I was raised Republican, but I was one of those little hippie chicks that was like, I can't believe we're watching the death count on the Vietnam War at dinner. It was like, it was ruining my meals. And, you know, I was just, but I didn't dare speak out until I got, well, yeah, at 13, I started speaking out, and then I started rebelling by wearing really short mini skirts.
But the answer is yes.
rebelled.
It did take this.
Right, but is it going to, I mean, here we are on the 14th, the inauguration is in 6 days, and we should come back again next week and look at the next level of this. What will happen? So much happens in what? Look at this screen.
It's going to be another
This
ninth
is
inning.
1 week. I was just gathering the news from 1 week. I cut and
I know.
paste and put it in here. This happens in
A moving
1
coup.
week.
It's a moving coup.
In 1
Right.
week. So what's going to
Well,
happen now
and
in
you know,
this week? This
well, you
guy-
know, Mitch McConnell, he's taking his finger and seeing which way the wind blows, you know, because, you know, depending on what happens next week, if we have more terror attacks from the radicalized element of the Trump cult, Mitch would be more likely to vote for impeachment. And the function of impeachment is not to remove him from office because he's being removed from office. It's to prevent him from running again. Because if he's allowed to run again, as soon as he's out of office, he's going to start campaigning for 2024 and fundraising and gathering a crowd. And we want to nip that in the bud.
That's
So
right.
I support impeachment, even if it's after the inauguration, to stop him from getting a pension for life. He's already a billionaire. What's he need the money for?
all his
Protection, the flight perks.
right now by his major financiers. So in Deutsche
Right.
Bank is, you know, they all they're pulling their support. I just want to acknowledge
Yeah, the
real
mafia
quick.
takes care of its
Yeah,
own.
but they still have the Putin money laundering system. So let's look at this man here. He is a hero. He
He is a hero.
good man. He saved the Senate. He's a hero. He was running up
That
those
was brave.
stairs, and he looked down. He saw that
That stick behind you
his
there.
people were not. He grabbed that stick when he started running up those stairs. Okay, so he saw that they were coming after me. He didn't want them to notice. He looked down the hall and he goes, "Oh,
He
they
diverted him.
don't have the Congress people or the Senate out to safety." So he kept running up to the third level, and they followed him. He was smart, quick on his feet. Oh, here, I like this. If the United States saw what the United States is doing in the United States would invade the United States to liberate the United States from the tyranny of the United States. I love that.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, and the poor woman that wound up discharging her weapon and shooting Ashley Babbitt in the neck, and unfortunately she passed away. It's unbelievable what I've heard from Trump supporters, people I would say in the Trump cult, that she's a plant, she's military intel, she's Antifa, you know, anything but accepting reality for what it is. Her and her Trump supporting QAnon buddies busted a window, busted a door, busted through into a chamber, and the poor police officer on the other side didn't feel like they had any choice but to discharge their weapon. Now they've killed somebody and they're traumatized and they're on administrative leave because of that. I mean, it's a really bad situation all the way around. And I just hope that's the end of it. I hope we've had enough of a scare and enough terrorizing to where everybody gets second thoughts. But on these parlor sites and telegraph sites, they're planning and scheming, the armed right-wing militias that have been radicalized. They're planning something. My guess is that they'll shy away from the Capitol because there's 20,000 National Guard there. They might do something as a gesture, but it's the other capitals in the other states that I'm a little concerned about because they don't have the police presence or the National Guard presence that Washington does. So I'd say we're likely to see something.
Michigan and Wisconsin.
Are they really going to be that powerful in all
Oregon.
50 states? I can't really see
They did
them.
it in Oregon.
I can't really see them doing that in Honolulu.
But just the fact that we're thinking about this is a form of terror. I mean, we're supposed to be happy about, you know, the election was won. Biden and Kamala are being inaugurated next week. This should be a happy day. And instead, we've got 20,000 National Guards worried about domestic terrorism. And that just shouldn't be. We've got to fix this problem somehow or another. And the people that I know that support Trump, what they feel is that he's the only thing separating us, keeping the life that we've always known. You know, I'm 65. I have friends in my age bracket, and they feel like their lives that they've always known, where they can put their boat in the water and they can shoot their gun and they can do this. All these rights are going to be taken away under Joe Biden, and he's going to turn the country over to China, and we're all going to be communists. That's the latest thing. QAnon didn't work in demonizing Democrats as child sex traffickers, so now the rhetoric is shift to where half the country are all commies willing to turn the country over to China, and Joe Biden sold out to China, and he's going to sell us down the river and turn us into a communist country, and that's it.
Let's just go to this segment. What role does Fox News? Because that's all bullshit. I'm going to call it what it is.
It's fun to see Fox get thrown under the bus.
Here we go.
What role does Fox News play in all of this?
Fox News is part of the media program. I describe in The Cult of Trump that, for example, Alex Jones would take a disinformation story from Russia Today media, broadcast it, it would be picked up by Breitbart, then picked up by Fox. And so there was this radicalization of the conservative media to off the charts deception and manipulation and disinformation.
I'm sure there are conservative right-wing people who feel the media on the other side is guilty of brainwashing individuals. What would you say to that?
So I get told all the time that I am brainwashed by the left-wing media, etc. And what I say is that the actual behaviors are what one needs to look at, and the specific journalistic practices need to be tested to see whether or not something has fact-based and evidence-based or pure lies and propaganda.
how did this cult behavior play out in what happened at the U.S. Capitol?
So what we saw in the riots and the invasion of the Capitol has actually been foretold for months. I've been talking about it. When I wrote the Cult of Trump book in 2019, I said, if he doesn't get reelected, there's going to be violence. Let's not forget Jim Jones and what happened when he was exposed. He ordered not only the killing of Congressman Leo Ryan, but his followers as well. I said it does not go well with malignant narcissist cult leaders being threatened by the law and for abuse of power.
Many of the people were arrested. They lost their jobs. Do you think this will be an aha moment for some of the president's followers?
Well, I do think because of the failed coup attempt and Michael Pence and Mitch McConnell and others saying, no, the election is certified, I think there are more and more people getting disillusioned because they've been so indoctrinated to believe that Trump is the proper winner of the election, when of course he hasn't been. And I think at the point that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are inaugurated, I think we're going to see a larger group of people falling away from this totalist mindset of believing in Donald Trump.
Is there hope for this country, or will someone in the future simply step into Donald Trump's shoes?
So I am an optimist. I do believe there's hope for the country, but I think we need to open our eyes and roll up our sleeves, and we need to do a lot of learning about how the mind works, how influence work, educate young people about their civic duties. I think we need to install many more checks and balances into our democracy, and I'm a big free speech advocate. But the law says you're not free to yell fire in a crowded theater if there's no fire. And what Donald Trump has been doing for all these years is yelling a lot of fires where there was none, or making lies up like he won the election by a landslide when there's no evidence to support that big lie.
All righty. Comments?
Well, what they're going to is a great big keg of orange Kool-Aid that's hidden somewhere that they're drinking from, that still thinks Trump won the election by a landslide, because that's just so counter to reality. I mean, with 60 lawsuits lost and everybody saying it was the most secure election in history, you got to give that idea up at some point, and they're just refusing to do that. Anybody can stick a microphone in their face and these days and say whatever they want. And if it feeds into a person's worldview, they accept that information, confirmation bias. And they're hanging on to the last end that Trump's going to do a second term. So I'm really curious what happens next week, how much, if any, violence will occur from that end of the political spectrum, and whether they'll finally come to a point of acceptance that Donald Trump has lost the election fair and square.
So you're saying they're still clinging on to that even now? That
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And let's look at that. Like, what percentage do you think of the 74 million? I wonder if there's any way.
About half.
You think that over
About 50%.
You know what? I don't think it's about the content. I think it's about the structure. It's my team against your team, and we ain't gonna listen to what your chant. We got our own chant. That's what the behavior.
Oh, yeah.
So let's look at that.
Yeah, it's like a football game. I know Trump supporters that are happy that I feel anxiety because in their mind I'm a libtard, and they're glad that I feel anxiety about next week because it's their last hold the power over me as their team winning. Is if they can make me uncomfortable, or the best case scenario, they would make me cry. They're happy.
So what made people like that? What happened that they're so delighted at? I mean, I had PTSD from all this.
We represent their disowned parts, the vulnerable parts, the part that loves everybody, the part that cares about people.
So
Well, there's even a congressman, I forget his name, but he sells T-shirts on his website that say "Cry more, comma lib." Cry more, lib. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, it's Schadenfreude. It's getting pleasure out of other people's pain, and when those other people that are experiencing pain represent an ideology that you feel threatened by, it brings you pleasure.
Wow.
And it happens on the other side too. I watch the Young Turks, the guy that does the Young Turks, and he's
Yeah.
got a little coffee cup, where he cries conservative tears. I mean, the liberals are doing the same thing, back at the conservatives, no matter how you cry and moan, Joe Biden's going to be your president. I mean, the same memes are just the words and the faces are being flipped. So now the liberals are, they're gaining traction on squashing, an opposing ideology. And the opposing ideology involves, say, abortion. The pro-life thing is huge in conservative circles. They think life begins at conception. You're never going to be able to talk them out of it. And the idea that they might be forcing their own philosophy or religious views on a strange pregnant woman that they don't even know, who should be allowed to make their own decision, escapes them. All they see is that a fertilized egg is life, and it's murder if you kill it. And you can't talk them out of it.
I got a solution for that. We're really close to being able, in fact, we do it. We do we transplant fetuses into other women, right? So they can line up all their
Yeah.
Republican fetuses and go to the abortion clinics and hire the doctors, say, no, don't do abortion. We'll take all those little fetuses and put them in all our Republican women. So bring your mothers and your daughters and sisters, and you can have them. There you
Yeah,
go.
right.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
Well, Carlin said
Well,
we need lots of live babies so that we can have lots of soldiers.
well, when
Dead
somebody feels
soldiers.
like they have the moral superiority over the other side, no matter what other arguments you bring up, it always goes back to, yeah, but you guys kill babies. You guys are okay with fetuses being aborted. And I get so tired of that old chestnut, because you can bring up a lot of other really important issues that have ultimate significance for mankind. And if they sense themselves losing the debate, they'll fall back onto the old abortion issue,
Yeah, but they don't
because
wanna
that's how they can win.
support the baby.
They can win every
Right.
argument that way.
They don't want to
What?
support the children through their lives. A lot of these people,
Oh, no,
they're so poor.
no, it's
and
pro-birth, not pro-life.
yeah, not
If they were
pro-life.
pro-life, they would be against the death penalty and against wars and want to
They did
dismantle the
until the last
military
2
and
weeks.
give support to single mothers and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, so they're not pro-life. They're out destroying our environment. They're killing people. We killed a woman for the first time in 75 years. I mean, it's just insane
Yeah.
what's been going on under this.
yeah,
It's like everything that was
Yeah.
sacred to humanity has been, destroyed, put aside. Hopefully,
you're talking about Lisa Montgomery, right?
yeah, 75 years was the last
Yeah.
time they killed a woman.
Did they kill her?
Oh yeah, she's dead. She's dead.
Yeah. That's a really sad story. I mean, the woman was obviously mentally ill. And the reason I oppose the death penalty is because, let's say my brother murdered somebody, I would still want to visit him in prison. And if he was killed by the state, that would traumatize me, and I didn't do anything.
Right.
So, for the sake of the families of the people that actually love that person that did the heinous thing. Now, I have a friend of mine who's a police officer, and he suggested, instead of just paying their way for the rest of their life, do some sort of hard labor where they're actually generating revenue instead of it being a liability. So he's got me thinking along those lines, that if we could do away with the death penalty, but somehow make death row or capital prisoners revenue generators, where it didn't cost the taxpayers anything to keep them alive indefinitely, maybe we can go that route. I'm willing to compromise.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your ideas, honey? We're gonna begin to wrap this up. Deborah was trying to come on, but she's not able to make it on. So
Okay.
let's try to close on a high note. So
Okay.
hopefully,
Well,
we get through-
hopefully
yeah, go ahead.
we'll
Your
get
turn.
through next week. We've all seen enough, and those 20,000 National Guardsmen will stand out there with nothing to do all week, and then they can go home. That's the best case scenario, that everybody's learned their lesson on this, on how things can get out of hand, and nobody wants to see any more of it. The more standard Trump supporters that are not really cultists, they don't like being associated with that. You know, just like when they were out looting and burning and everything, they called that the left. Well, I didn't want to be associated with that. I've never been to a protest. I've never looted anything or burned a building down. I'm not guilty of that. So both sides need to quit demonizing the fringes, because both of the fringes are batshit crazy and have potential for violence. So we need to police our own and talk to the fringes of our particular ideology and start talking to each other and try to come together as a country. That's what I'm hoping can happen with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. If we can get past the idea that the election was stolen, and people will accept that, yes, in fact, Trump lost. He accepts the loss. Everybody on his side accepts the loss, and they just try to make the best of it for 4 years. And I've told people, if you run a sane Republican, I'll consider voting for them in 2024. I'm not that ideological. It really made Mitt Romney look good. Trump really made Mitt Romney look good. In fact, if I'd have voted for Mitt Romney in 2012, we might have missed the bullet of Trump. So
I want to back up and really address like Black Lives Matter. To be fair to people who are Black, they've had to suffer through slavery, and then all these things that have happened. We reached the 21st century and we're still, lynching, but this time we're shooting, and we've replaced lynching with let's just walk in your house while you're sleeping and kill you. I mean,
right.
So I think there is some rationale and justification for
It's a false equivalency.
That wasn't quite a good evaluation, I'm sorry, on that, because they are extremely hurting and upset, and what do you make?
Yeah, it's a completely different situation.
Right.
That was a spontaneous thing that happened in response to white cops killing Black men and women. And that shouldn't have happened either, but it did. But it's not the equivalent of planning ahead with professional equipment to commit an insurrection against the capital of the United States. It's a completely different thing.
Different thing, right? And so, what were
altogether?
Josh, before we wrap this up, what were you going to say?
Basically, the country is trying to get over and make up for the slavery in its various forms that has infected this country from the beginning and is still in effect through various kinds of economic manipulations to this day. And it makes people who care about people, we can't stand it anymore. And Black Lives Matter matters profoundly, and it's not about violence. It's a matter of finally having some kind of justice. And for Native Americans who have had everything stolen, and it's time for reparations. It's time to make it right. Take care of everybody. That's what I think.
And the poor people that were trying to come to America and they got their children taken from them at the border.
Amazing.
I mean, these are atrocities.
It's like 600 kids.
A much better society, at least ideologically. I mean, and Trump lost me back when there was a story that was out when he was running for election, where this woman was recounting how she was walking towards Trump, and he came up. It was like right in public. He came up and he grabbed her. I think it was her breast. It could have been her pussy. I don't know. He just grabbed her sexual parts right in public and just kept on going. Now, I don't know. I was so angry that my brothers and sisters of the world didn't go up and collectively go over and punch him in the nose on behalf of their sisters and children, their daughters and their mothers and their grandmothers. It's like, why would anybody vote for someone that says grab 'em by the pussy. That's where you
Yeah.
lost me.
Well, I mean,
And so what
they got
about
guys that
women?
show up.
Have been treated that way for years, like we're some kind of sexual object that you can just go up and grab and screw. I mean, so all these things represent Trumpism. Trumpism is
Right. I mean, you're talking about somebody that paid hush money to a hooker right before an election. So
sexism, it's misogyny, it's xenophobia. And why
exactly.
is anybody voting for those things at this? And
It's an amazing thing that so many people voted for him this second time around. 70 some million people thought Trump was fine and dandy. And that's pretty scary to me.
it's very sad. It's pathetic.
He resonates
Yeah.
with their inner bigots.
So why is
Hey, they're inner
so
bigot.
bigoted? So let's just end with this. We see the browning of America. You know,
I think it's great.
my parents were very racist, and I was proud of them when I went back to visit them for the very last time before they died. Their best friend was a very dark black man, and they hung out with him every day. And I went, when did this happen? So, and my mother used to say, oh, there's black people looking at the house down the street. And she used the N-word. So I was just amazed that she was born in 1922. She died in 1997. That she was able to move past her racism. And so if my parents can do it, anybody can. And I invite everybody to really start looking at it, because now most of the people I know, I'm going to be 67 February 6th, they have brown, these white people have brown and black mixed grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And
And they're beautiful.
they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful,
Yeah.
talented, intelligent. And so let's, this isn't going to last. So why don't you guys get off your high horse and just start being nice now?
Well, I ran into a really patient cultural until I was 37 years old. I thought white people and black people were different species. And it wasn't until I entered college at the age of 37 that a very patient cultural anthropology teacher worked with me and emailed me back and forth privately and finally got me to understand that we're all the same species. We can all interbreed. And the number of genes that program for skin color are so small that they're not even worth mentioning. And, we've all got the same brain, the same internal organs, the same everything. And the amount of melanin that goes into the skin is minuscule and meaningless. So the fact that people identify as a different subsection of the population based on skin color, that would be like the people that have moles on the left side of their nose versus the people that don't have moles on the left side of their nose. We're all the same family, the same species, it's the same. So it really changed the way I looked at the world, because now when I see people that are much darker than me and everything, I just see another person. They're just like me, and it's not even important.
Final word, Sasha.
Well,
Take it away.
part of there's a value in recognizing your roots as Latinx or Black and celebrating that, and to be able to reasonably express the anger and to feel your oneness with those that have suffered with you. That's part of the identification process, and then you can transcend it. But it's perfectly. We need to listen to the rage for the sorrow of these people that have been punished by this system and do better.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, honey, you're so sensitive. All right, I think we're going to call it a day. Thank you so much, Russell, for joining us. And we'll be back
Okay.
again next Thursday for Elephants in Our Rooms. Thank
Okay, let's hope for the best
you. Okay,
for next week.
thank you. Bye-bye.